a new way of note-taking with Mike Schmitz and Obsidian. This is MacVoices. This edition of MacVoices is supported by Clear. Get to the front of the line faster, safer, touchless. Get 2 months of Clear free at clearme.com/MacVoices. This edition of MacVoices is supported by Headspace. Meditation made simple. Visit headspace.com/MacVoices for a free 1-month trial. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, we get to talk today about one of my favorite topics because it's one that is so varied and means so many different things to so many people, kind of under the same heading. And we get to talk about it with one of my favorite guests, Mr. Mike Schmitz. Mike, welcome. It's great to have you as always.
Thank you. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Great to talk to you again, Chuck.
The topic we're going to talk about is note-taking and note-taking apps. And I always give that introduction whenever this topic comes up because note-taking apps can be anything from stickies to some very sophisticated apps out there that border on a number of other categories of apps. I'm thinking word processing, mind mapping, project management, it's or something as well. You know what? Apple's notes used to be simple, but it's not anymore. It's fairly sophisticated, at least I think.
It is. Yeah, no, it's sophisticated. And that's the thing. Each one of these note-taking apps, which it seems like there's a new one every week, they have a very opinionated approach to what your notes should look like and how they should be formatted and things like that. So I think the dream is you find the one that really clicks for you. And I have tried just about all of them, and none of them have really clicked for me. I'm excited about one we're going to talk about today, which kind of just, it makes it, it goes down back to the most common denominator, which is Markdown. So essentially, it is just Markdown-based text files that sit on your computer, and then you can do all sorts of cool stuff from there. But that's kind of up to you what sort of superpowers you want your notes to have.
And I like that idea because one of the concerns I've had, and I'm sure you've gotten caught in it too, that sometimes getting out of a system, and especially a note-taking system, can be problematic. Now, I think the world has gotten a little better at making things interchangeable, but there's still those folks out there that have a proprietary system of some kind because they want you in theirs, or to be fair about it, their proprietary system lets them do something really cool and interesting and different. So, and the other thing that I think has been interesting to me, that I'm starting to see note-taking apps mention security when that was not something that was really on the radar before. But now all of a sudden everybody's concerned about all those little things they're scribbling down, and probably with good reason. So, but the new app that we're going to talk about is
Obsidian. I'm not sure if you had a chance to watch my virtual Macstock presentation last year. I did it on Roam Research and kind of the connected note taking. And Obsidian was kind of the competitor to Roam at that time, although it was not at the same place that Roam was. If you compared them side by side, it was very clear that Obsidian was very early in the development process. It has come a long way since last July. And it's kind of incredible what this small team is able to accomplish. And what I really love about it, going back to the security point, is that it is all just Markdown-based text files that sit on your computer. So if you don't want to sync them anywhere, you don't have to. It could be completely local, and that part's actually free to use. They do have some mobile apps that are in private beta at the moment, and they have this sync service that they've set up for it, which is end-to-end encrypted. So if you do want to sync your notes to other devices, I mean, essentially you could do the same thing with something like Dropbox if you wanted to, or iCloud Drive. But if you want to use their specific service, you can pay a couple bucks a month for that, and it is end-to-end encrypted. So they have all of these different like add-ons to note-taking, which not everybody's going to want, not everybody's going to use. And that's kind of the beauty of it, is you can kind of craft your own system So I've been thinking about note taking, and kind of one of the things that I ran into when I was using Roam Research is, well, this is great. I can do all of this stuff inside of Roam, but no matter what sort of app you end up using, you are going to need to interface with other applications. I've been kind of studying out this whole topic of personal knowledge management, and what does the whole path of an idea to an article, for example, look like for me, and what are all the pieces that are involved? I'm looking for the places where I can streamline things so it's easier and I can just focus on doing the work instead of focusing on jumping between different applications. But occasionally you're going to have to do that, and that's completely fine. I don't think anybody is going to be able to get everything that they do into a single application, and that's okay, because there are a lot of like specialized applications that do a specific thing a lot better. Evernote was kind of the first version of this. I think they kind of get an unfair reputation as the Roach Motel, because honestly, there's lots of other applications that could be defined as Roach Motels where it's easy to get things in, but then what do you do with those if you want to move it to something else? You really can't do anything with it. But there were basic checklists and checkboxes, and you could use it to manage some basic tasks and things like that. But with Obsidian, what's really beautiful about this is that that markdown layer, that's underneath everything. And so you can install plugins and things on top of it. But essentially, if Obsidian were to disappear tomorrow, what you have are a bunch of markdown formatted text files, which you can open and edit and understand and use in any other text editor out there.
Okay, so a lot of things here I want to make sure we touch on. So that's great. I would have a bunch of markdown oriented text files should anything happen to Obsidian. That's not very well. It's as likely probably as with any note taking app developer that because sooner or later we all see apps that disappear and you have to migrate over to something. And you mentioned plugins, which when I took a quick look at Obsidian, that sort of jumped out at me that there are all these amazing plugins to do all this other stuff, and that's great. And I'm assuming that's a dangerous word, Mike, but I'm assuming that if I use one of those plugins to do some of this cool stuff, I am still ending up with a text formatted markdown file at the end of the day.
Yes, you are. In fact, maybe this is a good place to switch over to screen sharing, and I can kind of show you how this is put together. I mean, the basic things you got to understand before you jump into it is that everything is markdown based text files, and you get to choose where these exist. So you just point it at a folder on your computer somewhere, and then all of the subfolders inside of there, those get sucked into what is called your Obsidian Vault. And then those are all your notes. And then you can, just like with Roam Research, you can make connections between those notes, whether they be a list of things that you got to get at the grocery store. I do some journaling inside of mine. I've got my own like cross-reference library from all the sermon notes that I take, all the sketch notes. If I go to a talk, I'll draw those pictures, and I'll put those inside of there. I've got videos from the guitar lessons that I do. It's basically like the repository for everything that I care about. And then I also spend time making those connections intentionally. So it's not just going to show like I've got a bookworm page where every single mention of the word bookworm, I'm going to create those links so that I can go find all of those mentions. But I am going to intentionally make those links where they make sense so that I can kind of navigate in and around my notes in a new way. There's kind of this the thought process for the, like, I call it the old way of note taking. Forgive me if that's not the right way to do it, but the way I grew up thinking about notes is you've got this folder of files, and you can organize them into subfolders. But essentially what you do is you dump everything in there like an archive. And then if you remember something, you can go search for it later and essentially navigate your way down into the specific folder where that note is and look at it. But until you have the thought first to go retrieve that note, it's really not doing you any good. So that's kind of like top down. But then with Obsidian and these bi-directional links, which allow you to go both ways, you can also take a bottom-up approach, which is interesting. You could start with an idea and then see, oh, this connects to that, which connects to that, which connects to that. And pretty soon, you're somewhere you didn't even realize there was a connection between these things. and then a light bulb turns on in your brain, and then that affects for me anyways, the real value I get out of this is the creative output. I see things in new ways, and then I'm able to synthesize those thoughts as I'm writing primarily articles for the suite setup.
So what just came to mind when you were describing it is two things. The first is a mind map. The second was that sounds like you're almost building a mini website by hyperlinking things.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
A mind map that is automatically updated in real time. And it is kind of like when you say a website, or probably a more accurate description of it would be something like a personal wiki, but with much more effortless linking between related notes, thoughts, and ideas. So with a wiki, you can put in a link to another page, but then if you want to link that other page back to the first page, you go there and you create a new link back to the other page. As soon as you make that first link in Obsidian, those two pages are now linked, and you can navigate between them using what's called the graph view, which is, to your point, kind of like a mind map. You've probably seen pictures of those graph views, and what's great about Obsidian is there's a local graph. So you can go to a specific note. You can see all the connections to this page and all the connections from this page. You can navigate between them that way. It's not just clicking on the graph. I want to see everything in my entire library because my library has something like 30,000 files. That is way too much for me to try to navigate. But when I go to a specific note and then I follow my train of thought that way, that is very useful in my day-to-day.
Before we do the screen share, I want to get one more thing out of you, and that is, give me an elevator pitch for why I would want to move from my current note-taking system, application, whatever it is I'm using, to Obsidian. What are the big key differences or key features or things that would let me do that I'm not doing now, other than what you just described, of course?
Well, I would actually have a conversation, and I would ask you first, why do you take notes the way that you do? What are you hoping to retain from the notes that you take? And if you have if any of the notes that you take are idea related or thought related because you want to create something in any way, shape, or form, the next question I would ask would be, do you feel like you are getting the most out of the ideas and the thoughts that you capture? And my guess would be you would say, I get a little bit of value, but I'm sure there's more that I can mine there. And then I would say, well, Obsidian will help you do that.
See, folks, this is why I like talking to Mike, because you notice he just turned it around and asked me questions. He didn't just prescribe something or say, oh my God, there's this great new whiz-bang feature that I've got to have. He asked me some of what I need, and then he'll prescribe. He's like a doctor, really, is what it amounts to. Mike, you want to show us some of this, and then we can talk our way through it?
Yeah, let's do it. All right.
Today's edition of MacVoices is supported by Clear. Get to the front of the line faster, safer, and touchless. What are your travel essentials? A good backpack? An iPad for productivity and entertainment? A set of noise-canceling headphones? Those are some of mine, along with Clear. Clear lets me keep my driver's license in my pocket and use just my face and my eyes to be identified and cleared through security fast and easy, without having to touch a thing. Clear lets me spend more time doing what I need to do pre-flight rather than standing in the line. And it isn't just for flying. Clear is in use at stadiums, arenas, concert halls, and more, making it easy to get to the head of the line. And since you seldom go alone, Clear lets you add up to 3 friends or family members to your account for a discounted rate of only $50 per person per year, with kids under 18 tagging along for free. Clear is the absolute best way to help you get back to what you love. They have locations in over 35 airports across the country, making it safer, easier, and faster to reunite with loved ones or take that much-needed vacation. It works great with PreCheck, too. And right now, for a limited time, you can get your first 2 months of Clear for free. Go to clearme.com/MacVoices and use the code MacVoices. CLEARME.com/MacVoices and the code MacVoices for 2 months of Clear for free. clearme.com/MacVoices and the code MacVoices. Thanks to Clear for their support of MacVoices. Today's MacVoices is supported by Headspace. Headspace is meditation made simple. What if 10 minutes could change your life? That's what Headspace can do for you in a pocket-sized guide that will help you sleep, focus, act, and be better. The Headspace app is all you need for a daily dose of mindful meditation that provides clinically validated benefits. Headspace can help you reduce stress, improve sleep, boost focus, and increase your overall sense of well-being. How do they do it? First, Headspace asks you what you want to achieve. For me, that's what sets it apart. No single approach that will fix anything and everything, but specific meditations that help you target exactly what you want to achieve. Over 600,000 five-star reviews can't be wrong. Neither can 25 published studies on Headspace's benefits. You can try that same experience for yourself. You deserve to feel happier, and Headspace is meditation made simple and more. Go to headspace.com/MacVoices. That's headspace.com/MacVoices for a free 1-month trial with access to Headspace's full library of meditations for every situation. That's the best deal offered right now, so head over to headspace.com/MacVoices today. Thanks to Headspace for their support of MacVoices.
All right. So here is Obsidian. Do you see my...
Yep, looks good.
All right, cool. So this is actually it's called a daily note. Let me back up here a little bit and just kind of walk you through kind of what I was explaining with the bidirectional linking. Oops. And this page, this is the one I want. Okay. So this is the interface, and let me just walk through this real quick. On the left, this is your file explorer, they call it. This is literally folders on your hard drive. So I've got folders up here for the articles that I'm writing. I've got folders I actually have the entire Bible in my Obsidian library with each verse as its own note file. That's an important concept because with Obsidian, basically what you want to do is you want to make what are called atomic notes. Instead of having like one note with all the text, I'm going to break it up into the smallest individual pieces, and then I can connect things that way. I'll give you an example of that in a second. I've got the daily notes from all the daily stuff, which I'll show you here in a moment. I've got the sermon notes, different newsletters, meeting notes, scripts for a time tracking course, etc. But this is my home note right here, and this is the actual editor interface in the middle. And this is Markdown based. You can see 2 hashtags. That's a second level header, and then it's a bulleted list. All the links to the individual pages are inside of double brackets. And what those do is they create a link from the home note to something else, which you should see over here on the upper right. That's the local graph view. Does that make sense?
I think so. Okay. I'm going to let you go for right now.
All right. Well, jump in and interrupt me if anything doesn't make sense. Below that, these are the linked mentions and unlinked mentions. So linked mentions, this is all of the places that have this note, home, linked to it. Okay, so this is the I want to page. That's another note, which has a link to go home. And then unlinked mentions, these are literally every place that has the note title in my library. So anywhere where I use the word home and it's saying, did you mean to link to this page? And if I wanted to, I just click this link and I create it. But those links don't exist yet, which is important because we want more signal, less noise. Does that make sense?
Yep, I'm with you. Okay.
And then from here, this is where things get interesting because as you make these connections, you can navigate through your notes kind of like a choose your own adventure story. All right. And I feel like I am still very much in the early phases of this, but I get really excited about stuff. And one of the ways I solidify my thoughts about things is I talk to people about them. So I'll walk you through kind of like an example here where I might come into my home note, and these are all pages where I am developing my own thoughts on these different topics. So habits, systems, workflows, journaling, meditation, etc. Okay. Each one of these is going to be created in a specific way. And I will actually go over to one of these. Before I do, so this is the edit mode. And if I wanted to edit this note, I can just type text as we go. All right. But then there's what they call it a preview mode. okay, where these are actual links now, and I can click on these. I hover over these, I get previews. So let's go to the habits one. Okay, now this is my map of content on habits, and I use that term. It's something I picked up from Nick Milo of Linking Your Thinking. A map is simply a representation of something, and everybody who makes a map of something is putting their own opinionated making their own opinionated decisions about what is important enough to show up on that map, right? So for me, I am no longer note taking where I'm trying to capture every single piece of information that I think might be important someday. I am note making, and I am taking those bits and pieces and I am formulating my own thoughts. So this is the page where I build out my thoughts on the topic of habits. And I start with this Charles Duhigg model, the standard model that people are probably familiar with: cue, routine, reward. Okay. Then I have what is called an opinion note right here. And this is important because I've found that as I type these out, it helps me solidify my thoughts about these things. So as I was creating this, knowing I need to interject these opinion notes along the way, I'm saying the problem with this model is that as soon as the cue is triggered, the routine happens automatically. You don't have a choice. So what do I like better? I like the James Clear model. Okay. And I have in here a link to the book Atomic Habits where I stumbled on this. Okay, and again, this is all Markdown. If I switch over to Markdown view, you can see this is what it looks like. So there's links to the James Clear page, the Bookworm episode where we covered this, tags, and then this is an iframe. So this is actually embedding my mind map. These are the notes that I took from the book, and I can zoom into these if I want. But then this is all exported again as Markdown text, and it's all right here. So here is everything that I took notes-wise from the book. And the additional links are, again, shown over here in the local graph. So I could say, okay, Atomic Habits, this is cool. I'm scrolling through here, and I stumble on Goodhart's Law. Okay, well, I can go to Goodhart's Law, which this is literally just this one sentence note, again, focusing on the atomic notes. When a measure becomes a target, it ceases to become a good measure. Okay, so I have taken like a top-down approach to these notes, but then, like I said, these are bidirectional links. So I could also go the other way, which is typically how I would go back and reference a note like this. Is I would stumble upon some, what was that? What was that thought about when a measure becomes a target, it's no good anymore? And then I would go search my notes for that, and I would find this. Okay, and then I'm able to see, well, that was actually, I heard about that from Atomic Habits, so I can go here and I can follow a different path at that point. Make sense?
Yeah, looking good.
So basically what this does is it allows me to come at my notes from multiple directions, and it allows me to see links between things that I wouldn't have necessarily seen that were there, but probably existed in my brain, if I'm honest with myself. A while ago, I read a book, Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon. And before I read that book, I never considered myself creative. I think I talked about this at MacStock one year. That book, Austin Kleon talked about how when you create something, you're simply making connections between dots that already exist in new and interesting ways that haven't been done before. And at that point, I'm like, oh, creativity is a formula. All I need to do is collect better dots, and then I don't have to worry about the output. Whatever comes out is the natural output that is from my collection of dots. So control what I can control, just focus on getting better dots. So when I am note making inside of Obsidian, what I'm doing is I am making sure that I'm putting in only the dots that are worthwhile to be developed, the ones that are important. And then that allows me to connect them, and I discover some new and interesting things along the way. This is an example of like connecting ideas from books and stuff, but I've got some other examples I can walk you through here too. Any questions about this part?
No, I think it all makes sense. It strikes me, I'm sure you get faster at it, but I mean, this is a very intentional kind of thing, that it's not a matter of just saying, oh, this afternoon I had a salami sandwich for lunch. And I want to be keeping track of what I'm eating. So I'm going to throw a salami sandwich in here, and then tomorrow I'll throw in, a burger, or tomorrow I'll throw in pizza, or whatever. I mean, there's a bit more thinking here as you said, as you're putting in the dots to connect.
Sure. Well, this is kind of idea development from a lot of books that I've read. But like you were talking about, there are ways to do that sort of thing as well, too. Which again, it's like hard to say this is where you should start with Obsidian because everybody's reason why they want to take notes is going to be a little bit different. But there is this concept of these daily pages, which is a plugin. Let me explain plugins real quickly. If I go into settings, there are two different types of plugins. There are core plugins and community plugins. Core plugins are basically in the application when you install it, and you go in here and you can turn things on, like that graph view, that local graph that I was showing you. You have to toggle that on. Backlinks, you toggle that on. And those actually are probably on by default. Search. So you can kind of craft your own application and not make things too complicated if you don't want a bunch of stuff in here. But there is a section right here for daily notes, which I use, and then templates, which I use. Templates allow you to take markdown formatting kind of like you would in Text Expander. And whenever you create a new daily note, for example, it's going to populate it with a bunch of stuff. So you don't have to do it by hand. Let me give you an example. I'll go to today's daily note, and this is my template. I'll show you how I use this, but this is actually for journaling. All right, so I have this concept of daily questions. This is where I picked this up from a book that I read, actually, Triggers by Marshall Goldsmith. I have been journaling for a long time, but I've not really enjoyed the standard prompts, which focus on like, well, what did you actually do or accomplish? These are based on your intention. So these are a phrase, did I do my best to, and then you list the things that are important to you. So grow spiritually, love my wife, love my kids, be a good friend, learn something, create something, and exercise. Those are all my specific daily questions. This hashtag section here, these are just tags. So if I go into preview mode, these are tags. I could click on this and I could see all my responses to the learn something prompt. At the end of the day, what I will do is I will go through and fill these out on a scale of 1 to 10. It'll look something like this. All right. And then if I have any journal entries, I'll put those here. I'll give you your own page check.
I'm flattered.
All right. Now, see, when I did that, it created this link. It doesn't exist yet because I haven't actually navigated to that page. But that's one of the many things you could do with Obsidian. You could essentially build your own CRM. You have a page for each person, and then every time you have a meeting with that person and you tag them, then that gets linked to their page. It's always a lot of fun to talk to you. And then I'll put in my tag here for journal and entry. Okay, so this is my journal entry for today, and then at the end of the day, usually I'll have a gratitude. Again, I'll tag it with hashtag journal / gratitude. But these allow me to do a couple things. I can go over to the tag pane and I can see under journal, the 18 different entries that I have in here. I need to get better at doing these every day. But the big thing I'm focusing on here is the daily questions. These daily questions, I do these every day. And these responses, these get recorded. And again, using a plugin, I can visualize these. All right, so this plugin, going back to the settings here, this is a community plugin. And these are all the community plugins that I have installed, and then I can toggle them on. This specific one is called Tracker, and that's toggled on. But just to give you an example of how you can extend these functionalities, what you do is you go into Browse Community Plugins, and then you see there are 197 different plugins here, which extend Obsidian in some pretty crazy ways. Let's see, I think I have this one actually installed. So there's a Kanban plugin, which allows me to take my standard Markdown formatting again and display it in a Kanban view. I can show you that in a second. And then you click on these and you just click the install button for anything that you would want to install. Let me give you an example of one maybe I don't have yet. Day planner. Okay, so this actually turns your daily notes into like a day planner if you want to track all your tasks inside of Obsidian, which you can do that. And then you click install and then you turn it on, and now you have new functionality inside of Obsidian. So getting back to Tracker here for a second, let me show you what this does. I have another note here called Daily Questions. Okay. And I have second level headers for my different sections. And then this is like a code snippet, which is going to say, tracker, show me everything that has the tag daily questions spiritual, create a line graph, give it a label of rating with the minimum being 0 and the maximum being 10. Okay. This looks kind of complicated, but I just had to do it once. And now look what this gives me. This gives me a way to see plotted my my daily questions uh, over time. And this is a big thing that I look at when I do my personal retreats every quarter. I'll go back and I'll look at these responses and I'll see, where did I have a couple of days here where my exercise rating was really low. Well, what happened those days to cause those low ratings? Or if there's one that's consistently pretty high, that's great. I can leave that area for now. Maybe there's one that's consistently pretty low. Maybe I should figure out some goals to address those areas. And that's just like one specific example of how I've hacked this to do something that I have always wanted to do with these daily questions. I have searched for so many applications that could do this very thing where I could just put in 0 to 10 responses and plot this on a graph, not in Excel. Something easy, where I can just pull out my phone, jot down my answers, and then I have them there when I want to go back and review them in this sort of format. Day one can't do that. I have not found a single application that can do this sort of thing for me. And I was able to build it in probably an hour or two using a plugin for Obsidian.
Okay, stop here for a second and let me make sure that I understand a couple things. What you're showing me makes perfect sense. Put the numbers in, get the graph, all that. So that those daily questions were specifically built to work with Tracker within Obsidian?
Those are my questions. You can literally make Tracker sort any response to any tag that you would want.
Okay, so it could be yes, no, it could be red, blue, green, it could be whatever.
Yep.
If I didn't have a Tracker installed, basically I would just have a bunch of answers and nothing to display them. Is that a correct statement?
Yeah. Well, see, there's a lot of different things that you can do with these basic building blocks. It's like tags. People know what tags are, but you really don't know how powerful they can be until you start looking at some of the plugins that are available in Obsidian, which allow you to display things like this in a really crazy way. So what I've done basically is give this tag a value and then plot that value over time. But if you understand that basic concept of what is a tag and what sort of things can you control with a tag, then you can do all sorts of crazy stuff. So for example, let me go into article status. So this is using another plugin called Data View, and it's showing all of the articles that are in my articles folder. Okay, so again, just a code snippet here, table, and it's going to show the file, and then it's going to show one additional piece of information, which is the status. And it's going to display those from the articles. And it's going to show me here the ones that are in progress, not started, and done. I can do something similar with like bookworm ratings. Okay, so I have a note for every episode in Bookworm and the ratings that we gave things. And what this is showing is my rating and Joe's rating from on a scale of 0 to 5, kind of like Amazon 5-star ratings. If I go to this page, the way that's showing up is I have put this. So this is 3 dashes indicates like front matter metadata. If I'm in preview mode, you can see that. Okay. And it's saying in the metadata, Joe, the assigned value here for Joe is 5.0. The assigned value for Mike is 5.0. And then what that Bookworm ratings page does is it pulls in everything that it finds that matches that query basically and displays it in a table view. So you can do lots of cool stuff with this. You could put metadata at the top of your daily notes. Did I drink coffee today? Yes or no. And then you put in like coffee : yes, or coffee : no. And then you can track that in a data view sort of a thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, you answered the question. by showing me another capability, which is great. Because again, the more that we get into this, the more you start to understand your comments about this can be almost anything you want it to be. Mike Schmitz will be back in the next edition of MacVoices to continue his demo of Obsidian, explain a little more about more of the power of the program, and also how it has integrated into his analog system. Mike also talks just a little bit about why some other options out there have left him wanting and sent him in search of Obsidian. That's next time on MacVoices. I hope you will join us. Until then, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.